I'm Walker Robinson with Remax Premier, and today we're going to talk about finding a rental in Chicago. I normally spend most of my days doing buys and sells and helping landlords lease their properties, but occasionally I do help tenants find their properties. I don't spend a whole bunch of time on this just because the statistical probability of me getting paid is rather small. And as we get to the end of this video, you'll hopefully understand why I'm saying this up front. It's really important for me to be completely transparent. I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste my time. Finding rentals in Chicago is extremely difficult. There is no one system that is in place that a renter can go to and find all the listings that are out there, right? It's a little bit like the wild Midwest. You have rentals everywhere. Private websites, signs on front yards, buildings that only use their own website, the MLS, Zillow, Redfin, the list goes on and on. There's a million different apartment websites that you can be using to search for a property, and I'm hopefully gonna bring all this full circle and make you understand sort of what type of properties are listed and where they're listed, who they're listed by, and most importantly, how people get paid, right? One of your most important questions you're probably asking is, who is this guy Walker? What's he gonna do for me? And how much do I have to pay him? Let's start with the very first one. How much do you have to pay me? Absolutely nothing. I do not work with tenants and lock you into an agreement. Ultimately, you do have to sign something, but I let you out of that agreement at any time with no fees, right? So we're just gonna put that out there right up front. So it's gonna cost you nothing to work with me, but I am gonna give you a crap ton of information that you're gonna be able to use to help fine-tune your search and make it as least stressful as possible, okay? Let's get started. Where do rentals hide, right? You're out looking for properties. You're probably using one like Zillow. That's probably the most common website that renters will be out there using. They're on Zillow looking for rentals, and there's a reason for that. Zillow is getting their information from multiple different sources, one of them being the MLS. The MLS is access only to brokers. Someone like myself, I'm a real estate broker. I represent buyers and sellers, and this is what we use in order to put all our data in to list properties for sale. It's the same system we use to take our buyers out and show them properties that they're gonna like. And websites like Zillow or Redfin or Realtor or whatever have you, they're getting most of their information from the MLS. It's a process called syndication. So in order to go in the MLS, you typically have to be a condo. So there's three types of properties, right? You have condos, which is one individual unit in a building, big or small, that is owned by one individual. So one unit owned by one individual, so it's a private owner, and they have hired an agent to rent their property out. The second type of properties out there are going to be apartment buildings. These are the entire building owned by one owner, and they usually have a management company that is going to be out there marketing and leasing the properties, okay? And then the third is a combination of both of these, and these are going to be owners that are DIY, I call them. They don't want to pay a fee to their listing agent to rent their property. They're going to try to do it themselves. So these types of units can be private. They can be the entire building. It just depends on the particular situation. So we have two general types of properties, right? We have apartment buildings where one person owns the whole building, and we have condos, which are privately owned individual units by one person. Condos are in condo buildings, which means everyone in the building owns their units, and there's not usually more than one person who owns one unit. Let's just stick with that for now and not get too far in the weeds. So these condo buildings, owners will typically hire someone like me to list their properties on the market. And when I say on the market, there's a variety of places that I put them, but they will hire me, they will pay me my fee. And just so you know, my fee for a landlord is first month's rent. So the first month's rent is my fee to cover all of the marketing, all of the screening of a tenant, background checks, credit checks, drafting of leases, getting signatures, circulating the lease, coordinating, getting keys and final walkthroughs. So basically, as an agent, I'm representing that landlord and I'm taking you through the process, step one through step finish. That didn't work out really well, but whatever. So that's typically a private condo. Those are the vast majority of the landlords I represent. I don't represent apartment buildings. I don't manage the entire building. I don't do anything with any of that. So those condos you're going to find are going to be on the MLS. I have access to those, and I can give you access to those. So one of the things we're going to talk about is getting your criteria, so I can set you up on a search where every day you're going to get a listing in your email box of all the new rentals that match your criteria, and you can go through and let me know if you're interested or not interested. I can get you access into those listings. Those brokers who do have those listed on the market, they're going to pay my fee. They're going to offer me some sort of compensation. More often than not, I see them paying me 1/2 of the month's rent less some sort of transaction fee of like, I don't know, $200, $300, $400, $500. It just depends, right? So with that said, I want to just dovetail really quick into how I get paid. I'm typically getting paid from another agent, or I'm typically getting paid from the landlord directly. If I can't get paid that way, I'm going to tell you immediately, right? Because you're not going to pay me, and I'm not going to make you pay me. I'll let you know, hey, I would love to be able to get you into this property, but so-and-so isn't going to pay my fee. Here, I want you to reach out directly. So that way I'm not a hindrance. The whole purpose of me in this process is to make it as smooth and transparent as possible. I do not want to try to pigeonhole you. I do not want to try to tie your hands and, yeah, do I want to get paid? Absolutely. Who doesn't want to get paid? But at the end of the day, I value relationships more than I value the paycheck, which is kind of odd. But those relationships usually work out in the long run. More often than not, if you've come across this video, it's because you've had a friend or a family member use me and they said, hey, you probably should use that Walker guy. Why is that? Because I'm going to lay it all out there for you. I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know, and I'm not going to charge you for it, which is pretty rare in this world because I should be charging you every hour for the work that I do. But ultimately, like I said, this is about relationships, and this is not about just getting a small paycheck. Most rentals are in the $1,500 to $4,000 range. When I get paid, like I said, it's usually like a half month's rent less some sort of fee, $200 to $500. So even if you're renting a $4,000 property, that means I might get paid $2,000 less, between $200 and $500. So I might get a fee of like $1,500, and then I get to pay my RE/MAX dues. I have to, all the wear and tear on my car, all the expenses that I have. So at the end of the day, that $4,000 rental, which you think, an agent's making all this money, is not really that much. You're only banking out like, maybe $1,000 to $1,500 after you pay all your fees and expenses. So it's not a very lucrative business. And, I hate to break things down into hourly rates because that's a really bad way to look at it for real estate agents. But if you break down how much time I'll spend helping you along the way and advising you and guiding you, the hourly rate doesn't work out to be that much. So the value for me in helping a tenant is building a long-term relationship. Again, transparency. I'm telling you right up front. The value you have for me is our long-term relationship, not the little paycheck that I'm going to get, because on the tenant side of things, it's just a little paycheck. Okay. So we've gone into the weeds enough. You have an idea of like how I get paid. So we're talking about condos. They're listed in the MLS. I'm going to take information from you to set up a search, and you'll get an email every single day with any new listings. Again, those are broker listed properties, and they're going to offer to pay my compensation. And if they're not going to pay my compensation, I'm going to tell you and say you need to reach out to XYZ directly, because more often than not, they're not going to pay my fee. Do not go out there and tell them, oh, my broker said you're not going to pay their fee. That's going to get you into trouble, and I don't want you to lose a listing. The whole purpose of me telling you these things is because I want you to be able to get the condo. It's more important to me that you get the rental that you want versus me getting paid. So if you go out and say to the other broker, oh, well, my broker said I should reach out directly because he's not going to get paid, that's going to put a bad taste in their mouth, and they're going to think that, somewhere along the lines I'm going to be trying to get paid. I'm not. If I give you information directly, you act on your own behalf and you pretend like you don't even know I exist. If I can help you and I can get you in for a tour, I typically have to be present when you tour in order for me to get paid. There's plenty of brokers out there that still pay me. There's agents that don't want to show their own properties. So you're going to need a buyer or a tenant's agent in order to get into the property itself, because these people that list some of the rentals, they don't want to go out and show individual tenants. They don't want to screen every inquiry that comes through all the different online websites. So I can add value on that particular half. So in those situations, that's about 1/3 of the market, right? Private condos listed by the owners or their agents. The other third of the market are apartment buildings. In Chicago, there's a ton of apartment buildings. And what do I mean by that? Again, it is one owner who owns the entire building, and they typically have a management company. Can I help you with these? Absolutely. They're not typically listed on the MLS. They're not typically listed on Zillow. More often than not, if you're going to find them, they're only going to be on one website that I found so far, which is apartments.com. This is where the building has the ability to pay for ad space for an entire building. And you can see what different units are available. But the best way to find out what's available in an apartment building is go directly to their website. 99% of all apartment buildings have their own website. And you could probably think of some names like Reside. They're one of the biggest, apartment building companies, especially downtown. They have whole towers. On the north side, you'll recognize names like Beal Properties, ICM Properties, Plan Property Management, or whatever. You probably drove by, just saw their signs. They're available like that. These companies, they will often pay me, and they'll pay me actually better than most real estate agents. They'll pay me a whole first month's rent plus more sometimes, depending on the time of year and the situation, et cetera, et cetera. So if you find something, just send me the address or send me the website and say, hey, Walker, I saw this. I can try to get you in, and I will try to get you in. And if I can get paid, that's great. I have to be with you on those tours, and I have to set up everything for procuring cause reasons. But just send me those addresses and I can try to get you into those properties. And if I find during my process of trying to get you into those properties that it seems like they don't want to pay my fee or there's going to be a problem, if I smell anything like that, I'm going to say, hey, I think you should reach out directly, or I think you should set up the tour with this particular company because I don't want you to lose the property. And when it comes to spring market, spring is usually like March, April, May, June, July-ish. That's when things are most active, right? So I personally will list a property on Zillow during April, and I'll have probably 25 to 50 inquiries. I will try to group everyone together in group showings, and I have more than enough people trying to bid up the price on that unit where I don't need to pay another broker out there. Right? So this is how I say, this is why when I say, I might not get paid on something, and why would I just give you that information? Because if an owner has to pay a fee out or an agent has to split their commission, yes, is it unethical for them to push you aside? But does it happen? I don't know, probably. I mean, this is the real world, right? Money, cash is king, and people want to get paid. So if I smell anything that might indicate you're not going to get in for a tour, I'm going to tell you right away. You need to reach out. You need to do the legwork yourself, and don't worry about me getting paid. I'm not worried about it. I would rather you get the apartment, and maybe in a couple years when you buy a property, you'll use me and I'll get paid back then, right? Okay, so we've covered condo buildings, we've covered apartment buildings, and the last one is DIY owners and agents. And I just touched on this a little bit. These are owners who don't want to pay a fee. If you're a small property owner and you owe one condo, to pay 1 month's rent as a fee to lease your property is extremely expensive. When you run the numbers, it really kills your return on investments, or ROI. Small private landlords, every dollar matters. I know most people believe that landlords are, they're making tons of money and they're trying to screw everybody. It's not really the case. They have their own expenses. They might have a mortgage, they have to pay taxes, they might have to pay HOA fees, they have to pay for maintenance, wear and tear, turning over a unit, professional cleanings. All those things add up and they cost a lot of money. So if you all of a sudden go from making, a few $1,000s a year on a rental property to losing money, you might decide to not list the property with a real estate agent, okay? So with that said, you're going to find DIY owners, people who are going to try to do it themselves. Where do you find these listings? Zillow is the best one to find them. And you're going to look in the fine print where it says, this property is listed by the owner, or this property is listed by the management company. Avoid the agents up in the corner where it says get more information, because they may or may not lead you to the actual owner themselves. They might actually lead you to another broker who's going to try to get you into a property or sign you up and be your agent, right? So they're trying to get paid, versus when you go directly to the owner or management company, that management company or owner is not going to have to pay a fee out. So you're more likely to stand out among different applicants just because they're not going to it's not going to cost them as much money. So those are the three general areas where you're going to find things. Condos, which are listed on the MLS, and or Zenlist, which I'll talk about in a minute. Apartment buildings, where you're going to find mostly on like apartments.com or their own private website. So that's like you're driving by, you saw a building, you know it's an apartment building, you go on reside.com and you find the building and you find the unit you want and you go directly that way, right? And then the third one is the DIY owners and agents, and they're coming through Zillow, they're coming through Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, yard signs, or signs on the building. So this is when I say it's kind of like the wild Midwest out there, right? There's a whole bunch of different places people are going to advertise, and there's no one place you can go, which makes it extremely frustrating for you, right? Because you just want to find a place to rent, and you're probably losing applications, you're paying fees for these applications, and you just want this to be easier. So there it is, right? I've thrown it out there where you're going to find all these different properties and how I can help you with that. And basically, it's with 2/3 of the market. I can help you with the private listings through the MLS and Zenlist, and I can help you through apartment companies through their own property websites and or apartments.com. Honestly, apartments.com is a great place to start because they pull most of the ad space there, so you can get an idea of the different buildings that are available, and then you can always just go to the private website themselves once you find the building that you like. Okay, so the odds of me getting paid on a rental are very small on the tenant side. With that said, we're now going to move on to the two types of search engines. I talked about MLS a little bit. I'm going to get information from you, basic things like the neighborhood you want to be in, your monthly budget, all in, right? And this is sometimes utilities are included, sometimes they're not. We don't like to restrict things with rental properties. So on the search for a rental, I will keep it more broad and open, so you see everything versus seeing only what you want to see, which might be a very fine part of the market. And that's going to depend on things like number of beds and baths, pets, parking. Do you want washer and dryer unit, or is the building going to be okay? A lot of the private condos out there, they don't have washer and dryers in the unit themselves, right? Especially along the lakefront, those older high rises, they have laundry rooms. Parking, the parking might be owned by the owner or the parking might be owned by the building. Sometimes it's included in the fee, sometimes it's not. So when I say all in pricing, I mean if you had to pay for everything all yourself, what is your maximum budget that you're willing to go? And then we work backwards from there, right? So if you find a place that's all, at the maximum of your budget and it includes everything, that's great. That works for us. If you find that one that's a little bit cheaper, we might have to look at it closer, and it might find out that, okay, well, it doesn't have parking included in it, so we have to pay an extra, $250 a month. Or it doesn't have internet included, so that's an extra $100 a month. Or it doesn't have heat included, which could range anywhere from $150 to $300, depending on the size of the condo. So I want you to come up with a list of your must-haves. You're going to send this to me so I can set you up on your MLS drip. Multiple listing service through MRED, and you're going to get that email every day, and you can interact with interested, maybe, or not interested. You'll only see all the listings on the market once, and then you'll only get an email every day with new listings. Now, MRED and the MLS is clunky. I'm not going to lie. It is an amazing database, and it has most of the information out there for private condo and owners, but it's a little clunky. So there's another app that I pay for monthly myself, so it's called Zenlist, Zenlist. There's going to be a link in the email that I send you with all this information in case you don't want to read it. That's why I'm doing this video. It's a sleeker UI. It's got the same MLS listings that you're going to find on MRED, but you can search it more like Redfin. You can create boundaries. You can change your criteria. And one of the best parts about Zenlist is you get access to private listings. Private listings are broker properties where they put them on the private network, which is a hidden part of the MLS. And the reason they're hidden is because they might not be ready for showtime yet, right? Maybe they have 4 months until the lease is up. Maybe they need new photos and they don't want to put it out there just yet. Maybe they don't really want to advertise it to the entire market because they have fancy artwork or something inside it. There's a whole variety of reasons people use the private listings network. But the point of this is with Zenlist, the app that I give you access to, you can search these things by yourself. And again, you just send a message to me, hey Walker, I saw XYZ property on Zenlist. Can we get in? And I'll get you more information. I'll say, here's the full listing for it. Here's why it's on the private network. Here's when it's available. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We go from there. So the broker listings, we got two places we're going to find them, the MLS Strip and Zenlist. That's the most amount of value that I'm going to give to you today, is the access to those two particular spaces. Again, touring big apartment buildings, this is the second third of properties out there. This is the harder one. I don't have access to these. There's no easy way for me to give you access other than sending you to something like apartments.com. Why do I keep mentioning this? Because again, apartments.com takes out ad space for their entire building. So you can oftentimes go on there and you'll find a building that you might like in an area that you might like, and then you're just gonna say, hey Walker, I really like this building down at 850 North Michigan Avenue, which is an apartment building. And then I'll go onto the website, I'll see if I can figure out what units are available. I might tell you to go onto the website directly. I'll reach out to the leasing company and I can set up tours. Again, more often than not, in order for me to get paid with apartment buildings, I have to be involved. I have to go on the tour with you, and some of these tours are awful. It's a hard sell. We're going to go there. They're going to spend half hour to 45 minutes showing us 2 or 3 units in the building. They're going to sit us down. They're going to try to get you to sign something right away. It's great to have me there because I can sort of throttle things and slow them down, where a lot of times they're going to peer pressure you or hard sell you, and you might get emotional and feel like, oh my God, well, if I don't sign on the dotted line right now, I'm going to lose this apartment, which may or may not be true, but if I'm there, I can help guide you and at least pull some of the emotion out of the process and help you avoid pitfalls or signing up for something that you might not like. Okay, so we talked about the 2 things, the broker listings, the apartment buildings. We've talked a little bit about how I get paid. The owner listed properties. Again, I will just tell you straight up. If you send me an address, I'm going to be like, hey, it's only listed on Facebook. It looks like the owner's not willing to pay a fee. I'm going to have you reach out directly. And usually I give you a phone number or an email address, and I try to tell you the right person that you can go to. Again, I don't get paid on that. This is all for me just to help you and with that relationship. So we've talked a little bit about what the buildings are, where you can find them, and how I can help you get into them and potentially get paid on that. But in order to work with me, there's been a new law that's changed. And in Illinois, if you work with a broker, a real estate broker, I have to have you sign something that says you're working with me. So included in your email is going to be a tenant representation agreement. It's 2 pages. It's super simple. I tried to boil it down as much as possible that outlines the duties that I have by law as a real estate agent and how I get paid. I put on there, I expect to get paid a half month's rent, but a cute little provision in the bottom says, I allow you to break this contract with no fees at any time. So could people screw me over and go find apartments on their own? Well, yeah, probably, but that's the reason I'm doing this whole thing. Is a lot of times I found that most tenants aren't really loyal. Not saying you're not. I'm sure you're probably the most loyal person out there. But the reality is you need to find a place to live, and there's not a lot of options, and you're fighting against other people. So, real estate broker be damned, you're going to do what you got to do to get the place. I'm aware of that, and I'm going to try to help you with that. So that's why I put that provision in there. Even though I have to have you sign something by law, you can break that contract any moment. You're not going to hurt my feelings. In fact, I encourage you to do it, right? If you find the right place, I want you to get that right place, because at the end of the day, you probably are going to give my name out to somebody and say, hey, I used Walker to help me find an apartment. Even though he didn't actually help me find an apartment, I helped you during the process, okay? So I've included that paperwork in the first initial email that I've given you. Hopefully it helps a little bit to understand, how I get paid and what happens if I can't get paid, right? You're going to break that contract and you're going to go get yourself an apartment because you don't want to be homeless or end up in a place that you don't like. And lastly, the thing I'm going to talk about is my tenant Bible and pro tips. So I'm going to include my tenant Bible, which has a lot more information about what you can expect during the process. I have done another video out there. I'll redo it at some point, and I'll give you a link to that particular video. You can watch it. It's about an hour long. It talks about some of the pitfalls and things that you can do to make your search a little bit easier. Is this all a lot? Yes, this is all a lot. We're already 23 minutes into this, and you're probably thinking in your head, "Oh my God, this is so complicated. I don't want to make it complicated." The goal here is to get you educated as quickly as possible, so that way, when you do come across something that's unknown, you're going to know how to handle it and be able to zoom right past it, right? Instead of getting bogged down in emotions and all that stuff. So my tenant Bible will have a ton of stuff. It's a step-by-step guide to filling out applications, your credit scores, deposits, landlord red flags, and that's about it. So we're going to conclude this for now because I've babbled on way too long. But if you still want to consider working with me, go ahead and reply to the email that I send you and give me your basic information, right? And when I say neighborhood and basic information, I'm looking like for how far north you're going to go. Like, don't give me a zip code and say, oh, I live in 60613. I mean, that's semi-helpful, but be like, yeah, I will go as far north as Foster, or I will go as far west as Western, or I will go as far south as Fullerton. Just give me those general streets where it's, you're going to go as far north or south, and I can set up that search in that particular area. Or you can say, I want to be within 3 blocks of a red line stop, or I want to be within 5 blocks of a brown line stop. I can make the area search a little bit easier for you, so you're not getting too much crap in your email box of things you might not want to see. All right, I think I've covered pretty much everything. This is all in the email, so if you're watching this, it's just because you didn't have time to read the email, or a lot of times people don't read it anyways, or maybe you just wanted to see my beautiful face. So hopefully I'll hear back from you soon. We'll get your search set up and get you out to take a look at a few properties. All right, y'all have a great day, and look forward to working with you soon.